morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers. We're just at about 7:17 a.m. I'm Julien Skeete, and welcome back to Tobago Updates Morning Show. Quick shout-outs this morning to our viewers. Continuing to connect with us out there, Liesel James, Pearl Murray Beard. I'm seeing Bukomatic Punchman in the mix this morning, Godfrey Moore, and Nicole Ozoro. Good morning to you indeed. Each and every one of you continuing to connect with us here on the Tobago Updates Morning Show. And at this point, viewers, we're heading into the segment this morning as we speak to TEMA's update on the Tobago oil spill. Where are we at? We have on set with us none other than Allan Stewart, the director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, more commonly known to us as TEMA. Certainly, I want to say in these times, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, the big man in the business, no pressure at all on Mr. Stewart this morning. Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, we say what don't kill you make you better or something like that.
Indeed.
It's been a challenging period in our life as Tobagonians and for the country as a whole. And based on the question asked as to where we are, I think we are in a very good place where we are pointing towards strong recovery effort. The response so far has been good, both locally and nationally. And while for some reason we have not seen it being declared as a tier 3, but it feels that way, it looks that way, it walks that way. And probably from where I sit and when I look at the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, in my mind, I'm clear that we are into a tier 3 operation. And that is based on exhausting the assets of the Republic and also the requisition of aid that comes from abroad to this particular spill. But it's all positive in the sense that we have a handle on things, and therefore all the machinery or the gears within the machinery is moving towards a recovery effort where we are very, very strong about. So what does that translate to really? I think that may be the question on our viewers' mind. Over the past we're going into the third week already. Yes. We have continued to look at containment and containing the spill with the objectives of cleaning up where it is possible, and that has been going quite well. Thanks to the number of volunteers and professionals that have been brought in and have been placed onto the shorelines, that exercise continues. As you can see, this morning we see a little bit of more oil substances. Let me use the word oil guardedly. But you have a situation where these reoccurrence on the beaches sometimes comes with the territory, in the sense that the coastline is built with small little coves, and there are those pockets along the coastline on the Atlantic side that you see the repeat of these releasing of these by way of tidal conditions, and even the cleanup is depending on those tidal conditions. So that is going along quite nicely. The mangrove and those areas are we have boomed off those areas. We have utilized close to 4,000 feet of boom so far, and that is working quite well. We would have seen a couple days ago, some oil or hydrocarbon matters coming back into the port of Scarborough. We were able to boom it off quite well, and we're hoping that holds very strong. So we continue to do the monitoring. In terms of going a bit further, I think one of the questions people are asking about where we are in terms of the vessel, the wreckage itself.
Yes. But just before we go there, I want to get some clarity from you. We are at a point where, to the layman, we are seeing that there has been the Chief Secretary and TEMA would have started with a very urgent response, and we want to say kudos to the Chief Secretary, yourself, and your respective team in terms of what is considered an immediate response, and on a daily and regular basis, seeking to keep the public up to date with the happenings. More than that, we saw the intervention a few days later in terms of the Prime Minister, members of his ministerial team coming on board. Kudos and commendations in that regard. What I want to get clearly from you, just so that there's an understanding, based on the contingency plan, the national plan that guides Trinidad and Tobago, and the Prime Minister also alluded to it in some way, form, or fashion in the press conference. What is defined, or what are the general requirements for a Tier 3 by way of definition or your professional understanding?
A Tier 3 response speaks to resources or the impact of a hazard which outstrip the resources to mirror it. For example, once it go beyond your capacity, then you are at a Tier 3 where international assistance is required. And therefore, the hazard itself points you towards that. We are at that stage where we recognize that there was a need to do just that, so we would have done the necessaries in building the case towards the escalation from a Tier 2 to a Tier 3. But it's a pronouncement that it's left up to the national government to do. What we do is provide the ground truth in terms of where we are and what is required. So the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, they have engaged the services of an international body, TNT Salvage, to be exact, and their sole responsibility is dealing with the wreckage itself with a number of different scopes in terms of the scope of work. One is to recover the oil, do hydrographic surveys to see what the ship looks like in terms of using those instruments that allow you to, it's like an X-ray, right? So you see what is the contents, how it's, whether they are chambers of oil, and whether they are, what is the condition of those chambers. So that exercise began yesterday. Based on the projections, it was well stated by the company, based on the information, the SITREP, and what was provided last evening, is that you're looking at Thursday, Friday, to begin the process, one of which has to do with curtailing the oil that we know definitely would threaten other territories. So that is part of their scope of work too, to undertake those activities in the theater. So where that theater of operations will allow them to corral, so to speak, the spread of it to any neighboring territories. We know it would have entered into the southern part of Grenada's water. But however, based on the trajectory, we are quite comfortable, if nothing goes left, that it will not impact the shorelines of Grenada. We have that feeling based on it is keep going on a westerly direction. So we pay attention to that, and that is part of their scope of work. And then the salvaging part of it is up to them how they will go about doing that. And the recovery of the oil that is in the vessel itself, they will do what you call this morning, start doing tapping on the vessel. So at around 0800 hours this morning, they are supposed to be going out there to start that operations. So work is going ahead. So you have those Tier 3 operations taking place on the ground. And as I said, it's just a matter of the public announcement. But if you read carefully the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan and also the Tobago Oil Spill Contingency Plan, that is where we are.
So certainly, just to ensure that we are clear, and I'm glad you provided definition so that there's a better understanding from the perspective coming from the public space. So ultimately, and I know whether you acknowledge it or not, many of us here in Tobago, and in fact Trinidad and Tobago, respect and trust your judgment, and therefore this is ultimately a call for this to be declared as a Tier 3.
Well, yes, I think it's for whatever reason, the plan speaks I hold on to the plan. I
Yes.
go with the plan. I always say if you don't intend to go by a particular plan, don't write it. Because when you write to people like myself, that's my Bible. That's my manual.
You're guided by that.
So I'm guided by that. I'm protected by it as well. So I try to understand the contents of a plan, and I try to guide persons to their role and responsibility in the document itself. So you have that. Sometimes you're operating in a space where sometimes power and responsibility supposed to be hand in glove, and sometimes it doesn't work all that well, especially if you're probably new to the terrain or new to the office or something like that. So you have those situations, technical situation that happens all the time, acquainting yourself with documents that you're supposed to be guided by. So the tier 1, it will be a level where the Tobago House of Assembly takes. Make sure that you have a plan in order to respond to a tier 1 level. When it exceeds the capacity of the Tobago House of Assembly, it goes nationally, where the national office and the other partners from a national perspective comes into the pit here, and their resources is brought into the pit here. It exceeds your capacity, and sometimes that could be just money, or it could be a form of technology.
Yes.
It could be anything you are stripped, but it's important based on the impact of the hazard for the response. And if you don't have it, then you seek it outside. Yeah.
So moving in that direction ultimately, and we are going in good faith that the central government and the relevant ministry will ensure and give the necessary considerations to declare this as a tier 3. Would that therefore mean in good faith that we are anticipating greater resources coming to Tobago to move the process along a little further or a little faster?
Those
for those who
resources are
particularly feel that, it's a bit slow in treating with when you make the comparison to what you see, out there in the world, so to speak, and you hope would never have come to Tobago. How will this impact ultimately? Is that what we're looking forward to progressing?
I think that fairly to the national community, they have been doing an excellent job where speed is concerned. We have to take into consideration Tobago.
Right.
Tobago is 17 to 22 miles away from Trinidad. The logistics of moving resources is one. Then you have what I call another spoke in the wheel, that is called the procurement legislation. How do you coexist with a national crisis like this and move along with the procurement process? So that is a challenge.
It's a balancing act.
A balancing act, and also one that requires urgency in terms of the response. So you are saying we're not saying we are moving slow, but you're suggesting that
there may be one or two persons out there who believe it's not quick enough.
Yeah, but it's important to understand what is happening in this space. So, for example, let us go back to the 7th. That was the Wednesday before Carnival, am I right?
Yes, correct.
Good. And then there was Carnival, and then there was a cruise ship coming in and things like that. Today there's a cruise ship coming in. What is the impact of the cruise ship presence in regards to the Cabo Star? The Cabo Star is required in order to bring the heavy equipment that you need on the island. When we talk about heavy equipment, we are talking about trailers, tractors, frac tanks, 40 feet in length. Those travel on the Cabo Star. So the first sailing of the Cabo Star following the Carnival weekend was the Wednesday. And therefore, those are some of the impediments that really impacted the response beyond our control. Yes. But I must say that the national community, wherever they may be, the Port Authority, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, all of the players, they play their role as quickly as they possibly could, but you're going up against those logistical challenges. It's not like you're driving down south.
But you have to continue to strive to overcome. I want to get your perspective as well on what we're seeing on screen at the moment. And I believe, just clarify for us, this is in the Lambo area?
Yes. So what you have is the pit alive.
I believe this would have been recorded.
Okay. So these are some of the major concerns. As I said, I think I mentioned it, there are pockets. Based on if you look, there's a slight coved area in that area. So what happened is that The balancing act that I spoke about with the tidal conditions is that you have these pockets that oil move into shore by way of high tide. And then at low tide, in some cases, that's the time you have to be able to come up with a plan as to how you take it out. So you find the beach cleanup will be done on a low tide after there's deposits. You don't want that next high tide to come and take it back out to sea.
Yes.
So that's the beach cleanup. Then you have these large tankers, they're about 40 feet. So I'm talking about to move several of those to Tobago, which provide what you call gully suckers. So they go and they suction out the oil, and then those hydrocarbons are then transported or transferred to what you call frac tanks. They're about 21,000 gallons in each of one of them they can hold. There are about 20 of them on the island. It took time to, I understand, the last two more is supposed to be on the island. Then there's a capacity issue. So what you have is, this is an area that is plaguing the operations, and a lot of resources is lent to that area because it affects the school, the community of Lambo in that particular area, and also the ecosystem. The Scarborough Secondary School, just within maybe a 500 meters radius, you also have just up the roads, it's affecting the Scarborough Secondary School as well. So we have installed, the EMA have installed stations there to monitor air quality. Now, while those, I'm straying a bit because of time, while those stations, while the station is providing data and the testing is coming back with 0, 0, 0s, we have seen, based on that type of activity that is going on there, sometimes it allow the scent of smell to activate more. You will smell these hydrocarbon. So you have that balancing act, and that is one of the issues we are having with the school's closure and the deep cleansing that we have to do in terms of the deposit of hydrocarbon matter in a very film that moves along with the molecules of the sea blast or the air, and then it drops on the area a child may touch, and then it touches face, and you have a scratching, itching, may pass his hand by his eyes. So we listen to all of these things. We do the deep cleaning, and that they did a wonderful job over the weekend. But the work in that area have not yet been completed, and we are hoping that definitely by today you will see there's a strong possibility that school will be reopened very soon. Could be as early as tomorrow.
Excellent. Tell us something. Would you safely say, and particularly for those viewers right here in Tobago that have not been to the area, because I know that has been the advice, don't make it a sightseeing spot to just come and see what's happening. Allow the work to be done, and if you don't need to be in the area, avoid the area altogether. For the benefit of those individuals, and then connected as well, those in Trinidad. I was in Trinidad over the course of this weekend, and I had to bring clarity, even with my layman perspective, that Tobago is not shut down and Tobago is not cut out. Yeah. Is it safe to say the kind of progress that we have seen kind of has the situation mainly focused now in that Lambo waters area versus what you were battling with in the first instance?
Yeah, there's a strong effort being made in that particular area based on what the tide conditions and the energy is doing on that side of the Atlantic, where it is pushing the hydrocarbon. Sometimes they are locked within certain coves area, small coves, yes, among the rocks as well. And then when you have a high tide, it pulls it back out, and then it tosses it back to you maybe a few meters away in another coved area along the beach. So we have done those type of responses to ensure that we don't have things going back out to sea as much as possible. When they come in, you use the tide condition, you do the sucking up, you pull it back in. Then if there is residue on the beaches, you have them being cleaned up as quickly as possible. So it's like a repeating act, but it's part of the process.
Correct. All right. And note the clarity, folks. This repeating act is not happening all around Tobago.
No.
This is at the moment in the Lambo.
I think what showed it off, most times people hear the word reef and they think about Book Reef.
Right.
So the Book Reef is on the Caribbean side of the island. And therefore, what we are speaking about is a 15 kilometers impact area from Scarborough go right down to the end of Petrie, down on that end down there, and allow for there are about 8 zones that have been impacted. We have paid specific attention to the mangrove areas.
Yes.
Those areas are very sensitive, and they are doing work to, in some cases, prevent what is upstream from returning back to the sea. So you may have certain areas blocked temporarily by booms to prevent the liquids from going back out to sea, and then in a priority response, they take it out.
All right. We're just out of time, but I want you to just share very quickly as you can, volunteers. There are some out there with the misunderstanding that, I don't want to go there and get sick. It's going to kill me. Afraid this, that kind of thing.
PPEs.
Yes, please. Just speak very broadly and very quickly, because people seem to think volunteers are only required to clean up. But I understand that there's a wide area.
There's a wide range.
So
There's
tell us about that
logistics
quickly.
involved, and logistics involved as well. There's data entry, tracking costs, things like that, meals distribution, all that goes along with it, So there are 3 major command areas. You have the Scarborough Command, you also have the Lambeau Command area, you also have a staging area down at Cove for what is anticipated to happen this week down there. And all of these areas require the necessary manpower. We understand that we really have a man shortage, in terms of TEMA and its structure. We are already down to 50% of our staff where cert and all that is concerned. So the volunteerism speak well, and it's apply where it's necessary. Also, Heritage would have come in, and Heritage, they have come in and decided that they will engage. When I say engage, hire some of those volunteers to carry out who are volunteering. And that went along quite nicely. Yesterday, we had over 176 persons that were actually in theater in operations, and therefore we continue to encourage persons in terms of the registration. It must be done in a timely manner. So if you come after 9, 10 or anywhere around there, it means therefore you will have to be selected as to where you may fit in, or you may reschedule for the following day. Things like that, in terms of managing the numbers, in terms of procurement, and when I say procuring meals and things like that, refreshment, PPEs as well, personal protective equipment. I mean, that is critically important, in terms of dealing with that type of hazard.
All right. So you're encouraging persons to contact TEMA in terms of volunteers.
Excellent. Yeah.
Excellent. So, folks, that's a call going out there. And, we're very happy for this discussion this morning, Mr. Stewart, really bringing that sense of clarity to the general population out there regarding the progress that we have had to date. Certainly, you could never have too much resources in these circumstances. So, again, the call for a declaration, of a tier 3, so as to ensure any additional resources that we can get.
For the declaration.
Well, I'm putting it out there in the sense that ultimately, based on what you have defined, any additional resources that we can definitely get as Tobago to be able to help with the circumstances will be appreciated. But certainly we commend what has been put forward thus far. Again, information coming through TEMA right here in Tobago, as well as confirmation with the national apparatus also seeking to do their part and making their contribution. So we look forward to those continued efforts so that we will get to that place in the near future, hopefully, where we'd be able to speak to this as a thing of the past, or to get as close as possible to that thing of the past ultimately. As I said earlier, folks, in my speaking to the Scarborough Sec issue, powers you think I have, I do not have, but I am still encouraging. Let's get all the resources possible to be able to move things ahead. And for those of you viewing out there, right here in Tobago, those of you in Trinidad and even beyond, please understand and recall, Tobago is not shut down. Tobago is not shut down. We're still open. We're still operating. We're still beautiful in every way, form, and fashion while we deal with these circumstances affecting particular areas of the island at the moment. So don't cancel your vacation. Don't make adjustments to your travel plans. Come to Tobago. We still welcome you here. All right, viewers, we thank you so much for the continued love and support. And to remind you at this time that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.